And joining us now is Simcha Rothman, member of the Israeli Parliament for the Religious Zionism Party in Jerusalem. There, thank you for being with us this morning. So you were also one of the lawmakers who criticized this speech by Zelensky. Several voices in the Israeli Parliament saying that maybe he missed an opportunity here to make a more pragmatic speech rather than sort of coming in with this heavy criticism of Israel here. Well, what is your take?
I think that if Zelensky's speech was in the Knesset, I probably should have stepped out during his speech. The fact that he, I think that it was the borderline Holocaust denial, the reference he gave to the Holocaust, and history denial. Telling us that the Ukraine people helped the Jews during World War II, during the Holocaust. It's I have to say it's a mockery. That's of course not the history. That's of course not true. And I think that Ukraine and Zelensky himself had more appreciation and sympathy before the speech than after the speech. I think that Israel at large is Israel's interference in this conflict between Russia and Ukraine is not the smartest thing, but it can be tolerated if it would be accepted in a good faith. But apparently it's not.
Right. So what about the kind of about-face that he made afterwards, where he later on was in a more reconciliatory kind of tone in his video address in the evening? Do you feel like maybe after the speech, him and his advisors kind of understood that it wasn't productive what he did and were trying to maybe make amends a little bit?
Again, I'm not Zelensky's PR advisor. I am a member of the Knesset of Israel, and I think this speech in the Knesset of Israel was not good, and that's what I said. And also I said that the opening statement by the speaker, Miki Levy, Israel in the speech of the Speaker of the Knesset took sides. I don't think Israel, especially if Naftali Bennett wants to be a mediator, he shouldn't take sides. But definitely, we don't have any reason to take sides in this conflict because Israel has to put its own interest first and foremost.
But Simcha, is it not in Israel's interest also to give, for example, what it's doing, the humanitarian support for Ukraine, and at least morally siding with Ukraine, which is under an invasion by the Russian forces with many, many civilians being killed, and with its Western allies, the United States, the European countries, also clearly siding with Ukraine here? Is that not also in Israel's interest to a certain degree?
So first, Israel, there are a lot of Jews and Israelis living in Russia today. We have to have their interest in mind too. We also need to keep in mind that the U.S. and its allies, if we want to talk about that, where do they put Israel interest now when they're pushing forward to the Iranian deal? We have to be, if there is an ally, an alliance between the U.S. and Israel, how come the safety of Israel does not take place in the agreement with Iran? How come the Prime Minister of Israel needs to tweet that the Iranian regime should be the fact that they are funding the terrorist organizations that are on our borders and within our borders? We need to beg them so that the Iranian forces will not be declared a terrorist organization, put it out of the terror organization list. I think that Israel has to take care take care of its own interest. And Israel is the only country. Everyone can talk. Words are cheap, but Israel is the only Western country which, with Russia at our north border, We have to cooperate with Russia every day in Syria. So we need to be to keep out of this conflict.
But you talked about the fact that those countries, like the United States, European countries, are sort of throwing Israel under the bus when it comes to the Iranian nuclear deal, and therefore Israel has to take care of its own interests. Do you think Israel should be aligning elsewhere then? Because you're saying that this alliance is not aiding Israel, and therefore Israel doesn't need to, for example, side at all with Ukraine here.
Again, Israel should not take sides in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Israel has a lot in common with the U.S., of course, and it has a lot in common with the European countries. But you cannot expect, and one should not expect, Israel to pay the price for the failing of NATO countries to help Ukraine. They're throwing Ukraine now under the bus. They are talking a lot, but they're doing nothing to help Ukraine. And we need to align with that. When Ukraine is now under the bus, we are under the bus on the nuclear deal with Iran. If we don't take care of our own business with Iran and maybe cooperate with countries that want to help us, we will be thrown under the bus again.
All right. Simcha Rothman of the Religious Zionism Party, member of the Israeli Parliament, joining from Jerusalem. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.